And do experience profound regret around. What does that experience feel like? We all know the short answer. It feels terrible. Regret feels awful. But it turns out that regret feels awful in 4 very specific and consistent ways. So the first consistent component of regret is basically denial. When I went home that night after getting my tattoo, I basically stayed up all night. And for the first several hours, there was exactly one thought in my head. And the thought was, make it go away. This is an unbelievably primitive emotional response. I mean, it's right up there with, I want my mommy. We're not trying to solve the problem. We're not trying to understand how the problem came about. We just want it to vanish. The second characteristic component of regret is a sense of bewilderment. So the other thing I thought about there in my bedroom that night was, how could I have done that? What was I thinking? This real sense of alienation from the part of us that made a decision we regret. We can't identify with that part. We don't understand that part. And we certainly don't have any empathy for that part, which explains the third consistent component of regret, which is an intense desire to punish ourselves. That's why, in the face of our regret, the thing we consistently say is, I could have kicked myself. The fourth component here is that regret is what psychologists call perseverative. To persevere it means to focus obsessively and repeatedly on the exact same thing. Now the effect of perseveration is to basically take these first 3 components of regret and put them on an infinite loop. So it's not that I sat there in my bedroom that night thinking, make it go away. It's that I sat there and I thought, make it go away. Make it go away. Make it go away. Make it go away. So if you look at the psychological
An ant is pretty stupid. It doesn't have much of a brain, no wool, no plan, and yet, many ants together are smart. An ant colony can construct complex structures. Some colonies keep farms of fungi, others take care of cattle. They can wage war or defend themselves. How is this possible? How can a bunch of stupid things do smart things together? This phenomenon is called emergence, and it's one of the most fascinating and mysterious features of our universe. In a nutshell, it describes small things forming bigger things that have different properties than the sum of their parts. Emergence is complexity arising from simplicity, and emergence is everywhere. Water has vastly different properties to the molecules that make it up, like the concept of wetness. Take wet fabric. If you zoom in far enough, there is no wetness. There are just molecules sitting in the spaces between the atoms of the cloth. Wetness is an emerging property of water. Something new only created by a lot of individual interactions between water molecules. And this is sort of it. Many things interact under a certain set of rules, creating something above and beyond themselves.
Sometimes ignorance is preferable to the detailed truth. Maybe we only care about truth insofar as it empowers us. Knowing and thinking about all of the details of every orange tree would just be a psychological burden for the most of us. I'll take illusion over the reality. But I can't help but ask, is it possible that the mind is actually accessing a deeper kind of truth? Maybe the mind is separating the signal from the noise. But what constitutes signal versus noise? Our values. A farmer that values knowing all the details of an orange tree will view it differently than a regular person. Well, where do our values come from? Here's Nietzsche's view from Beyond Good and Evil. Behind all logic, and its seeming sovereignty of movement, there too stand valuations, or more clearly, physiological demands for the preservation of a certain type of life. For Nietzsche, our values come from our physiological demands, and what does our physiology demand? Power. It wants to survive and thrive. What does it mean to thrive? To imagine the world a certain way and to be able to make that illusion a reality. Someone could try to contest this idea by saying that they don't seek power or want to thrive. They won't eat or drink anything to prove this point. But they would still be seeking a kind of power. They imagine a world in which they prove the idea wrong, and they seek to bring that world into fruition, even at their own expense.
Financial literacy is a vital skill that empowers us to make wise decisions with our money, crucial for our time in college and beyond. It is the compass that guides us through a sea of financial decisions, from student loans to budgeting for daily expenses. Firstly, understanding the basics of budgeting can prevent the common pitfall of overspending. It teaches us to differentiate between wants and needs, ensuring that our financial resources support our academic goals and well-being. A study by the National Financial Educators Council highlighted that college students who adhere to a budget experience less financial stress. Secondly, knowledge of saving and investing places us on the path to long-term security. By grasping the power of compound interest and the importance of saving early, we can plan for future goals, such as further education or starting a business. In conclusion, financial literacy is not just about numbers, it's about making informed choices that pave the way for a secure and prosperous future. The summer learning loss is a term that they use to describe the regressions that kids in low-income neighborhoods face relative to their affluent peers. So they say in lower-income neighborhoods kids forget anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 months of what they learned during the school year over the summer, while their middle-class peers break even or even make gains. When I first learned about the achievement gap, I was a freshman in college and I certainly wanted to understand what the causes of it were. And as I started to do my research, I realized that there were 1,000 different reasons why the achievement gap existed, everything from a lack of positive role models to poor health conditions in so many of these inner-city and low-income neighborhoods. And then I found this startling statistic that said that 2/3 of the achievement gap could be directly attributed to unequal summer learning opportunities, or the summer learning loss. In low-income neighborhoods, kids forget anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 months of what they learn over the summer from the school year, and so when they return to school they are now 2.5 to 3.5 months behind their affluent or their middle-class peers. Just to put that in perspective for you all, the school year from September to June is only 10 months long. If a kid forgets 2.5 to 3.5 months of what they learned, that's almost 25 to 35% of their learning. Teachers have then reported that they spend anywhere from 1.5 to 2 months reteaching old material. So if you add that additional 20%, you're talking about 50% of a kid's learning. So we sit here and we ask ourselves, why does an 8th grader only have a 4th grade reading level? And the truth of the matter is that theoretically speaking they've only been in school for half the time.